Yo, what's going on, everybody? This is the Apocalypse Project podcast. I'm your boy, Play B. I also got my man with me, Rev. How you doing, man?
Hey, what's going on? Am I on? There we go. There we go. Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's your boy, Sir Rev the Servant, here with Play B, and it is actually our Halloween special.
Yay!
Hey, and a round of applause. Hey, and I'm actually, this time, I'm actually dressed up. Somewhat. I'm guess
You look like a Dalmatian.
I'm actually a stormtrooper.
Oh, my bad.
And I'm not even a Star Wars fan. So anyways, we're really excited. We're really excited today because, yes, it is Halloween. This is going to be our Halloween special. We have a two-parter. We just spoke to Dr. Heather Lee of Exploration Paranormal, the Warren Legacy Foundation, Real Haunts. I mean, there's just a long list of things.
It's an impressive
resume.
Yeah.
And then now we have probably one of the most specialists, if that's the word, I think it's a word, guests that we've had on this show. I mean, almost like you don't even have to just...
I like the music building up to it.
Yeah, it's building up.
Yeah, it's building up.
Chris Mckenna, director of the Warren Legacy Foundation.
Nice.
Now, that name itself just triggers a whole lot of thoughts because everybody in the paranormal field and anybody that knows anything about the paranormal is very familiar with the Warrens themselves. And we're going to just talk about their legacy a little bit. But before we begin, I want to say welcome and hello to Mr. Chris Mckenna. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on, guys. I appreciate it.
No problem. Thanks for being on. Yeah,
thank you.
We appreciate it.
We're excited to have somebody of your caliber on to speak with us about this topic. Now, a little bit about us primarily is that this isn't necessarily a paranormal podcast. We talk about a lot of wide-ranging topics, and it's kind of been an interesting story how we kind of like treaded down this road per se. We started with a good friend of mine who actually was sharing with some of his paranormal experiences on our podcast, right. And he actually suggested that we get in contact with Dr. Heather Lee, and then that led us to a good friend of hers, Kenny Torres, and that did lead us to obviously you, Chris Mckenna. So first of all, just can you just for those that may not be familiar or not that well versed in the paranormal field or background, just explain a little bit about who you are and some of your accomplishments and some of the things that you've been involved in, just in general.
Sure, be happy to.
Thank you.
And I appreciate you letting me on because for me, I do these things so we can educate the public, so we can keep people safe. And it's an honor to get the chance to do that. My name is Chris Mckenna, and I'm the grandson of Ed and Lorraine Warren. They're the people you know from Annabelle and the Conjuring movies. Don't believe those, by the way. They're not documentaries. They're loosely based on reality.
Nice.
But I started working with them back in 1980. Yeah, summer of 1980. And I've been doing it ever since. I've been traveling all over the world, learning about how the paranormal manifests differently everywhere, trying to learn different ways of dealing with these issues so that we can help people. And I have learned that, well, one of the things I've learned is that everything I thought I knew, I was probably very wrong about. I have far more questions today than I did before. But I've worked on some of the most famous cases, not Amityville, but Maurice Serial, the haunting in Connecticut was actually my case.
Okay.
The Haunted with the Schmerls in West Pittston, Pennsylvania, that was another one of mine. So yeah, I've been around for quite a long time. Now we run the Warren Legacy Foundation for Paranormal Research. It's a worldwide organization. We help anybody who believes they're being troubled by the paranormal. And we're also out there educating the public.
No, and that's great. And the one thing recently, I was just talking with Dr. Heather Lee, and one of the things that I told her that I was really intrigued by by watching her Ghost Education 101 things that she does on a bi-weekly basis. And then this last week I happened to catch the Warren Files, that show that actually is done on the Warren Legacy, I think, Facebook page. And one thing I found really interesting was that, the topic came up about psychology. And I remember I asked a question of you guys because most people don't associate, I'll say this for me. I normally don't associate psychology when it comes to the paranormal, because usually psychology deals with human behavior. There's some renowned psychologists. Like one of my favorite psychologists is Dr. Jordan Peterson. People like that. They kind of deal more along the lines of, here's what you need to do to be the better you, or so to speak. So I want to just reiterate that question back to you. Because you guys went into depth, and I suggest anybody who wants to get more information about all this stuff, go check that out on the Warren Legacy Foundation Facebook page. But
actually, it's called the Warren Files.
Or the Warren Files, yes. Yeah, that's
or Warren Legacy on Facebook. You're right. Sorry.
It's really important to be accurate, so I'm glad you clarified. Yeah. But so can you just explain a little bit, like, is the psychological part for the person experiencing the phenomenon, or is it has something to do with psychology of the paranormal itself? Am I making sense?
Okay. It's a great question, and it is actually going to be a bit of a complicated answer. One of the things, I'm so grateful to my grandparents because, they were groundbreakers. They weren't the first by any means. People have been investigating the paranormal for hundreds of years, but they were the first to truly bring it into the public domain. But they didn't have very many teachers, if any.
Yeah.
I was lucky. I had them, and then I went farther. They never saw, at least not until probably the 1990s, they didn't see the connection to psychology and the paranormal. But the truth is, there are always underlying reasons why one person is vulnerable and another is not. Why this family is being bothered and that family can live in the same house and never have any problems. And so we have to treat those issues as well. Now, even though I'm a therapist and we do have psychologists on staff, we do not offer therapy, but we help you to find a good therapist in your area who can help you with that problem so that we can then help you with the more spiritual aspects of it. Now, having said that, it's not always mental illness. It could be a million different things that make you vulnerable. And we have to take our time and diagnose those vulnerabilities so that we can then get you the proper help.
Interesting. Okay, yeah, because I'm glad that we were able to see that there's more than just reporting a paranormal phenomenon and then just now we're just going to kick the doors in and just take it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because you get some people that take it to either extreme.
I hate that. I truly hate that. Honestly, I don't care if I ever get anything on film or ever get any evidence that I could use to convince the public. I don't care. All I care about is helping people. And when these teams go in there and all they want is their clicks and their likes and they want to, capture something, so they stir up trouble and then they leave the family in the lurch. That just
they're the ones that have to deal with it when they leave.
That is not what we do.
No, and that's really interesting. We actually asked that very question to Heather in her last interview we just did with her, and one of the things that we were talking about is you really see, I asked her about this uptick in interest and intrigue into paranormal. By way you see YouTube videos, you see Facebook groups, you see everybody taking everybody on ghost tours and wanting to do this and that, and I was like, well, How cautious are you about doing stuff like that, or what is your opinion now on what we would call the paranormal tourist industry? Because that seems to be a big thing. Whenever you kind of look around, that there's always something advertising. Hey, we're paranormal, or we're haunted, or this place is haunted. Like for instance, here in California, I don't know if you're familiar with the Winchester Mystery House. But the big allure with the Winchester Mystery House, which I've been to a few times, is that it's haunted, or things along those lines. So what is your opinion when it comes to either mainstream or people trying to make a name for themselves in the paranormal, I guess, tourist industry?
Yeah, for lack of a better word. Huh?
Yeah.
I've been doing this over 40 years and nobody knew who I was. And I liked it that way, but the only reason I'm coming forward now is because my grandparents aren't around anymore. I can't use them to have those cases come to me. Now I do it simply to let people know we're here and we're here to help. I don't like paranormal tourism. I've never done it yet, although God help me, I'm doing one this month. But it's a safe location. I know it's a safe location. I've been there. That's something that bothers me. I had to help teams who brought people into a place that they didn't check out first. And then there were attachments that followed those people for 2 years.
Oh, man.
And one guy actually broke his leg because he got pushed down the stairs by the entity. Just to circle back to psychology for a second, if I may.
Yeah, no problem.
The thing that I'd like to get across to people, other than ghosts, which are definitely real, that's just us. These other things that manifest, some of them, there are some things out there, and I can't explain them. Absolutely. But 9 times out of 10, other phenomena is self-manifested. It's your fear taking shape. It's why in the United States right now, there are all of these shadow people. It's because in the United States, we no longer have these cultural figures like gnomes, elves, duendes, monjas. Sorry, I've been around. These creatures in other cultures. And so the things that form are formless. They're just shadows. Even the Slender Man, which started out as kind of a creepy pasta type of a deal, now manifests on cases because of people's fear and belief.
So let me ask you a question, because I remember we learned something very... Oh, sorry. No, I just...
No, I was going to say, that should tell you, look at the power we've got. And if you give up your fear, what we're capable of accomplishing.
So it's like self-manifestation.
Well,
like
no,
we can
because
manifest it into...
we talked with... Remember when Heather was talking about there was this thing called the Philip experiment?
Yeah.
And that you could wheel the paranormal into existence based upon your fears. Yeah. And I think that's really interesting, because it's just like you see all these... Like the Slender Man. I remember when that was just a creepypasta, and then now it
was like an internet thing. And
there's a lot of other these those would be an interesting show topic too, to look into some of these creepypastas. Right. Some of them are actually some real creepy stories and anything. But it's interesting the fact that we take all that into let's say collective consciousness, right? And then they then become, I guess, manifested. And I'm speaking in that way, like I said, I'm not shy about saying this. To say I'm a little bit of a skeptic. I'm not saying I deny the supernatural, because I do believe in the supernatural. I just not too convinced on how it manifests itself. Right. But I could see that as a probability.
I'm a complete skeptic.
Excuse me?
I'm a complete skeptic.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I've been thrown across the room. I've been thrown across the room twice. I'm an exorcist. I've been kissed by a ghost. Everything you could possibly imagine has happened to me. But the truth is, I'm still skeptical on every single case, because 95% of the time, it is not paranormal.
And that's interesting. So, and another thing I wanted to ask you specifically is because I know that your grandmother passed away. I think in 2014. I think it was. So it hasn't been.
No, just passed away 2 years ago this April. I was with her when she died.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry, I got the wrong information, and I'm so sorry. But it's just, it hasn't been...
No, fine.
It hasn't been that long since she walked this earth. And her legacy, I think, was cemented long before her passing. And, the cases that she worked, like you mentioned, it's like a couple of them were loosely turned into movies. The Conjuring. You had the Annabelle movies, and then then the famous stories of the Amityville house, and all these different types of things. Now, when you were growing up, like, did you? What was your experience, or what was some of the things that they shared with you, if you don't mind sharing with us, of like what their experience was in specifically dealing with those? Because I'm not going to go to the movies and think that, yeah, you're right, they're not documentaries. There's going to be some embellishment, some theatrics involved.
You know, I'm curious about that room they always show where they had all the haunted relics down in the
the museum.
Was that a real thing? Like, was that in the house, like locked behind a door for reals?
What, the Annabelle doll?
Yeah, you know, they had the, you know, like
no, it's in an artist's studio that's connected by a corridor. You go in the basement and you go through this dungeon door down this dark corridor, and then there's a separate building, basically, attached to the house that's where the museum is. And, you know, I wish the one legacy that I wish we didn't have is that they called it a museum. Because it isn't really a museum. It was never open to the public except by invitation.
Oh, okay.
And this craze that people have for collecting haunted objects, it bothers me so much. Because I had a case a year ago, I think. Yeah, a year ago. A woman who cleans out houses before they get renovated. And she's allowed to keep whatever she likes. And she's a bit of a psychic, so she picks up on things that have energy. And she takes those, and she's got a separate place for them, a separate house. And she contacted me because she was having problems. She was being attacked. And she blamed it on her alcoholic ex-husband and her son getting drunk in a graveyard many, many years ago. Well, no, it's that she's collecting haunted objects, but she's not willing to get rid of those. And I'm not a collector. I don't bother collecting that crap. I know how to get rid of it safely. And that's what matters, just getting rid of it.
Yeah.
I wish people would not collect it.
Oh, okay. And so, like, that's interesting that you say that, because, I remember hearing it being called a museum, but they house a lot of artifacts that like the Annabelle doll, for instance, which is behind a certain glass, and it almost has to be reverenced in a certain, like, respectful way. And I always wondered about that, because there's another doll that I remember hearing about, I think in Florida, the Robert. Robert. It's like a similar to
Robert doll. Yeah.
It's similar to that, and that's really interesting to think about that. But yeah, it just seems like I would treat it more like a university does when they have certain things. You know, this is for research more than it is to make a tourist attraction out of. And I think that's what a lot of people assume about the Museum of the Occult, because I remember when I was watching the live stream with you and Heather, somebody actually asked a question in the comments about, hey, is it open to the public yet? Is the museum open to the public yet? So it's really interesting that, are actually really important that you make that distinction about the fact that this isn't here for people's amusements.
Right.
It's actually has some real strong energy and power to it. And there's a reason why it's put in one place. You know, that's just my thought.
Exactly.
So more
it's to protect the public.
Yeah, so more specifically, so like when looking at watching, I don't know if you've watched any of the movies that they made about the certain instances with your grandparents, but what were some of the authentic experiences that your grandparents had, or that they shared with you, or you may have even had when it came to those actual stories, the actual events, I should say, of that the movies were based on?
Well, honestly, the first Conjuring movie, I've been told, is very accurate. My grandmother told me it's very accurate. But it was also the very first time I ever heard about that case.
Really?
She never talked about it. Wow. It was not one of the big ones. But Amityville, that's in Conjuring 2. By the way, Conjuring 2, the worst ever.
If I'm not mistaken, I think the first Conjuring
the
movie...
Nun does not exist.
Okay. But the first Conjuring movie, I think...
Alex does not exist.
The first one, I think the reason why I think I'm correct in saying this, was because that Lorraine Warren actually was working with the director on the first Conjuring movie.
Yeah.
And I think that's the reason why it was more
Yes.
accurate, I guess, than the second one, because she was actually on set. She was invited. She was a consultant, and I think that's the reason why that most people regard that one as the more
true to the story.
Yeah, the more legitimate one. And then the other ones are kind of like, well, this made a lot of money, so we're just gonna do it bigger, and then
Yeah.
it's all profit.
So in number 2, they talk about two real cases in Conjuring 2. Amityville really did happen, and yeah, I can talk about that quite a bit. And then Enfield, England. I've visited there myself. That was a horrific case, and there was no old man in that case. That was an inhuman set of spirits. And what I don't understand about it is they do all of these crazy things in Conjuring 2, where my grandmother's going through a flooded basement and my grandfather's hanging out of a window by his fingertips, and she sees the demon and she screams out, "Valak!"
Yeah.
Like that's supposed to do something. It's not Rumpelstiltskin, for God's sake. You don't just name and it goes away. But in reality, there was a young boy. I can't remember if his name was Timmy or Tommy. He's the little boy that had a stammer.
Oh, okay.
And in reality, he aged to death in 2 or 3 weeks.
No.
There's a disease called progeria where you will die of old age by the age of about 20. He was about 9 or 10 years old, and in just the space of a few weeks, he aged to death. And as they were pulling his coffin, it was a horse-drawn carriage bringing his coffin to the church. Those voices were swearing at people on the street, throwing rocks to people. And then when they brought the coffin to the altar, to the front of the church, the coffin was spilled out on the ground, and the body fell out. And that was real. That's what really happened. And yet none of that's in the movie.
Dang.
That seems actually more interesting than...
Yeah, that'd have been even more creepier.
Exactly. Exactly. Maybe they just didn't want to kill a child. I don't blame them for that.
What is Hollywood? They've done worse.
Yeah, that's true. Conjuring 3. There was no Satanists involved in Conjuring 3. There have been in other cases. I worked a case where we got chased by Satanists after we had left the house, because they were using the energy there to manifest something that they wanted. And the man in the house and his pregnant wife were coming under attack. As a matter of fact, one night I was there with my cousin, and the woman started screaming. We were in the bedroom across the hall, and the woman started screaming. So I started to run across the hall, and the husband was levitated above the bed, above his pregnant wife, under possession.
Dang.
I jumped in the air and I tackled him. We spilled over onto the other side of the bed, fell on the floor. My cousin came up behind us. I'm shouting, "By the power of Jesus Christ, I command you to be gone." He's throwing holy water on the guy. We eventually got him out of it. And then a few days later, as we were leaving the house, there were 3 guys in a car waiting for us. And they chased us all around Newtown, Connecticut. I think it was just a few weeks later, there was a local hunter in the backyard, in the woods, and he found this giant, like 7 or 8 foot tall Satanic statue, which you can see photos of online in the museum. And and there was also a makeshift altar made out of stone. They had been using the necromantic energy from the funeral home next door to this house.
Oh, snap.
And that they were using ritual to focus their intentions to gather this energy. I am offended by the idea of magic. We have a lot of magic users in the foundation. We've got witches and all sorts of people. For me, it's quantum physics. It's just we can shape our local reality. I was in a house that had been a poltergeist house, and for 2 years, nothing was going on. And I went to visit with my partner, and we were invited to spend the night. So we got out our sleeping bags. We kicked the 10-year-old out onto the floor, and we took his bed. And my partner starts complaining that I'm kicking the bed. I'm like, John, I'm not kicking the bed. And so we turn off the light. John, Chris, stop kicking the bed. As soon as he said that, the bed picked up, flew across the room, slammed down, and broke into pieces.
Oh, man.
I laughed my ass off. I thought, that's incredible. My partner could not get out of there fast enough. He ran downstairs, and the woman, her name was Lorraine, the mother, she's sitting there having a cigarette and a cup of coffee at the kitchen table. She turns around and she looks at him and says, "So you believe me now?"
Yeah, no kidding, right? Oh my goodness! And another interesting thing that I wanted to say was that
but it's important to understand.
Okay,
that was caused by the boy. That was not caused by a spirit.
Oh, because they were accusing the boy of having a hand in the paranormal. That
I'm telling you, no. The boy didn't do anything paranormal. He didn't summon any spirits. It was his own psychic energy that tapped into some energy that was in the house.
Okay.
And he was so upset, he had to give up his bed and sleep on the hard floor.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
He did that.
Wow. And I've always said that, you could speak things into existence, whether,
say that a lot.
I do say that a lot because, there's times where I'm like, hey, I'm having a bad day. And I'm like, you know what? I speak it into the universe. It's going to be a good day today, or things are going to go as planned, or, well, except for today. But, for the most part, it works. Or at least, I don't know if it's just something, like the placebo effect, for instance, in my own mind, just by me mouthing the words or saying them out loud, maybe it's causing the placebo effect, and it causes me to have a good day, or it causes things to manifest, so to speak. So I do kind of do. I guess for me, over Rev, it's easier for me to kind of put it together, and it's more of I can believe it easier, rather, I should say. But yeah, that is just crazy. So basically, you're just wheeling these things into existence, essentially.
Yeah, and I get that too. But one thing that you mentioned, Chris, that I found really interesting.
The placebo effect is a good example.
Oh yeah, I think so. But the one thing, Chris, that you
because we don't understand why that works.
Yeah.
But
and there's a lot of scientific evidence that says the placebo effect, in some cases, especially with pharmaceuticals, is almost as good as the real medicine. And the placebo effect.
That's powerful.
It's that powerful, yeah.
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
There
was a study done where they took 10,000 heart patients. And now the heart patients and the doctors had no idea that this study was going on. And they took half of them, and they put them on prayer lists all over the world. And the other half, they didn't. And then they charted the progress of the patients. And those that were being prayed for had a higher survival rate and got better much more quickly.
Yeah.
So that directed energy, that faith is extraordinary. When you actually believe, you can do an awful lot.
Oh, okay, so that's interesting. And the one thing that you pointed out was the fact that you invoked a religious kind of, how should I say that, phrase or entity when dealing with the paranormal. You said that Jesus Christ and the holy water, so all that is indicative of Christianity or Catholicism. And I remember in some of the research that I've done and things I've heard of in this sphere, that the Catholic Church and priests would actually come to your grandparents to validate or assist in exorcisms. Is that true?
It is true on occasion, but it was a love-hate relationship because the church hated publicity. Okay. And so there were an awful lot of times it was hard to get the Catholic Church to cooperate with my grandparents, which is why we often would go to Bishop Mckenna, because he was pre-Vatican II old order Catholic, and he didn't answer to the bishops or to the Pope, and he could help us without that.
Oh yeah, without that official
stamp of approval.
yeah.
So
Yeah, without
the bureaucracy. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the truth is, every religion in the world has exorcism rights. Every religion.
And how does that work necessarily? Because let's say, for instance, like you're invoking the name of Jesus Christ to expel a demon or a entity or whatever have you. But how does that work, for instance, when you go to another country and yet there is no understanding of who Jesus is? Does the
I don't usually.
But why is that? Like
We work with the religion of the people who are being afflicted, always. Because if they don't have faith in what we're doing, then it doesn't work.
Right.
So does that relate to what B was talking about into the placebo effect? So if you go around going, let's say, to Cambodia or somewhere where they don't understand who Jesus is, and you start saying, "Oh, in the name of Jesus," and spraying holy water, they're going to look at you. Well, how is that supposed to help? Is that where psychology plays in?
My grandparents also would work with rabbis or Buddhist monks or anybody, depending on the case. We work with those because my understanding. Now, here's the thing. The paranormal is not a religion. It's a field of study. At least it should be.
Okay.
And if you're just going by these old ancient texts and you believe this ridiculous bunch of demonology of ancient demon names and everything, which actually were like Sumerian deities and Babylonian deities that we've then demonized, then yeah, for you it's a religion. For me, it's not. And so what I'm telling you today, I probably would not have said 5 years ago. But I get new data and I adjust my thought processes.
It's like a science.
So, exactly. Now, science is a wonderful tool, but unfortunately, we do not have the right theories for the paranormal. I think my belief is that, or my hope is, when we have a unified field theory in quantum physics and Newtonian physics, when we can combine those two, then we'll start to unlock the mysteries of the paranormal. When you look at Buddhist monks, for instance, they're able to create something called a tulpa, which is a thought form that has physical presence. They can create a tiger out of thin air that will walk the halls, that could maul you and kill you. And then they can make it go away. Witches and people who don't know what they're doing even can create things called egregores. Basically exactly the same thing, but when a witch does it, they do it with an expiration date. So they give it a task. It's basically a spirit they create. They give it a task, it goes out, it does the task, and then it ends. If they forget to end it, or if it's created by a troubled person who taps into some energy, that's where you get the poltergeist phenomena, or that's where you get these things that we now call demons. They're just a manifestation of an awful lot of problems, and we need to deal with those problems to get rid of those manifestations. I'm willing to use spiritual means, and I absolutely pray. I believe in God 100%, but I don't believe that any religion is particularly correct. I'm a minister without a religion. For 50 years, I struggled with my faith, and I studied every religion in the world that I could. And it wasn't until I gave up my ego and this desire to understand the mind of God or the plan of God that I was able to find my faith. You know, NASA says that there are more living worlds in the universe than there are grains of sand on Earth. All right. So if you believe in a creator God, your mind is supposed to understand something that can create
Right.
and keep watch over that many worlds. the amoebas on my back have a better chance of understanding what I plan on doing tomorrow.
Well, no, and that goes back to this idea of like when you break the idea of what God is, you're talking about. I mean, if you really understand the actual term God, it's something that transcends time, space, our own mental thinking. It's like if you could break something down and understand it like into a test tube and examine it with the scientific
it wouldn't be a God.
method, it wouldn't be a God. So and that's interesting when you think about it.
Yeah, for me, my faith comes in the idea that God is like a weaver, and we're just the threads. We can't see the tapestry that He's creating, so we have to have faith.
Ah, that's a good one.
I like that. Yeah, I never heard it put in that perspective.
Yeah, and another thing I wanted to touch on because I like the name of the foundation, the Warren Legacy Foundation, because I think it truly, regardless of what you think or believe about the paranormal, there is a real legacy that they left behind. Like you said, the museum isn't just a museum. I really see it as a way of investigators who are serious. I don't know if you're familiar with like the great city of Alexandria in Egypt back in 2,000 years ago.
Of course,
they were the first ones to have the library and all that stuff, or the university.
A lot of great minds went there to study as well.
And I think that's what they created.
Absolutely.
In the paranormal field right there is just like, here's a way of examining the paranormal in a way where you because there's no university you're going to go to and be like, okay, major university. I mean, I'm talking about like Ivy League, universities or something like that, where they're going to entertain these types of stuff. But for what they have done.
Well, that's not really true. There are universities in the world that do study the paranormal. Edinburgh.
Oh, really?
Is one. Then there are colleges like Truckee College in California has paranormal programs. I've actually taught there.
That's just right over here.
Yeah. And I don't like a lot of these online courses that people take because, who's teaching them?
Right.
Where did they get their knowledge? And so now what I'm about to say is going to sound so egotistical. But we're putting together a set of courses, but because for the foundation, and remember, I started the foundation with my grandmother.
Yeah.
And she loved it. She loved the idea of expanding our reach. We have 4 goals, and one, of course, is to help people with the paranormal. Another is to educate the public. Another is to help people who have psychic abilities. My background's in psychology and therapy and social work, and my grandmother always used to help people one-on-one with their abilities, and we couldn't do that after the movies came out. The demand was too high. Now we've got 2 psychic support groups online, one in English, one in Spanish, with about 800 members in total around the world.
Nice.
So we're there for that. And then our final goal, our 4th goal, is to educate the next generation of researchers. Right now, there's this Wild West mentality.
Yeah.
That's really ridiculous. And if you were to do anything that you watch on these paranormal TV shows, you'd get yourself or the family in serious trouble, if not killed. It is not something for hobbyists. This is real, and it can be deadly. I've had 2 different cases where people have died.
Oh, man.
And I take it extremely seriously. So we want to teach people. We've got a code of ethics we want to be adopted by this profession. It's similar to the Hippocratic Oath, but it has things that are specific to this field of study. I don't care if people are members of the foundation. I just want them to adopt this code of ethics, so that families know that they're safe. But if we can teach people good practices, if we can teach them that the client comes first, and how to protect themselves and how to protect the family that they're serving, then I feel like I've done something worthwhile.
Yeah, and that's very important, because me and Rev, we were tempted to go and investigate our local graveyard just for, just for fun, just to see if we'd get anything. And we kind of did that, but we stayed on the outside of it. But even in doing that without any prior knowledge, I mean, it just we knew we had to have a certain level of reverence for the place, you know, a certain level of respect for what we were doing and how we were going to do it. And so we didn't continue any further, only because we didn't know how to go about it, and we didn't want to go and disturb something like how you were saying and make things worse, or maybe bring something home and then now, you know, it's haunting our house or so, whatever, what have you. So even as people with no experience at all, I mean, that's why I find it odd that
happens a lot.
Yeah, well, that's why I find it odd that
we get a lot of people who call themselves researchers.
Yeah.
Who then get attachments and get hurt,
right,
and
right.
they come to us. There was a very famous man in Mexico. Out of respect for his family, I'm not going to say his name, but he used to go on investigations by himself, and he went to this one place that was renowned for its bad energy, for its being a dangerous place, and he went by himself doing a recording, and all of a sudden he got this horrible pain in his belly right then. And 2 days later, he's getting his hair cut, and he calls his wife, and he says, "I need to go to the hospital. There's something wrong with me. It's really bad." A month later, he was dead. Oh. And I believe it was caused by the paranormal, because he was a celebrity who didn't really understand what he was dealing with. Nice guy, wonderful guy, but it cost him his life.
Yeah, that's what we were afraid of.
Yeah, no kidding.
And that's why I find it odd that, you know, you got all these TV shows, Ghost Hunters, and all these other shows. They just go in there. It seems
but it's not just that though. It's also online, YouTube.
Well, yeah, exactly.
Instagram.
But I think that's where people are getting these ideas. They see, and then they mimic what they see on TV.
Well, no, you're exactly right. And that one thing I wanted to ask you, Chris, is because there is a celebrity status attached to the name of the Warrens and their work and the movies and all this stuff. So it's like you're going to get a large amount of traffic of individuals that are, I want to see what this is. I'm going to contact these guys. And how many people just contact based upon the Warren name, but they're not really interested, or they're not experienced, or they bite off more than they can chew, per se, and they kind of like turn around and run screaming.
We have a lot of people who either come to us because they want to be famous.
Okay.
We're not taking them. And if they're a case and they come to us and they say, "Oh yeah, you know, I'm an investigator. I got hurt. I want help. Will you please come to my house and check it out? It's the most haunted house in Australia, and I'll have my cameraman send you a bunch of evidence." Well, do you want our help getting rid of it? No, I just want you to come check it out. No, thank you.
Yeah, I gotcha.
Oh, so you could legitimize, basically,
Right.
Your presence will legitimize.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm not about to do that. That's not my goal.
That's so interesting, yeah.
I don't have time for that. My grandparents probably would have loved that kind of stuff, but I'm not my grandparents.
Well, it's a different time,
all
though.
I care about is helping people.
It's a different time, because nowadays it's like because of internet fame, like people are starving for that. Back when your grandparents were doing it, getting to legitimize something like that was a big deal, because there was really no other way of doing it. So I think that's really important. And one last thing, because I know we're coming up to the end of our segment here, but one of the things I wanted to touch on just really briefly was that, because I'm sitting here listening to the stories and your grandparents, how was it? Like, I guess normal is not the right word, because it's just like, I didn't grow up with paranormal investigators as parents or grandparents. So it's just like, how was it growing up? You know, I don't want to say normal, but what was it like?
Yeah.
What was it like?
Well, first off, my grandmother was sweeter than she appears on video. And our holidays were huge productions, because she would spend weeks cooking and decorating and making everything perfect. And even every Sunday, you know, for our Sunday dinners, she just would go all out. She never sat down with us, because she was always serving everyone. Having said that, yeah, my childhood was difficult, very difficult.
Huh.
You know, I was there when they were not famous, but when I'm about 10 years old, they started getting known, and all of a sudden, I'm the weird kid who's got the strange grandparents.
Oh, I see. Yeah, yeah.
You know, it wasn't until I was 16 and I went on my first case. After that, honestly, I was a bit of a rock star in high school. It was kind of fun. You know, like, it was like a change overnight. It was so much different. You know, so what was it like? Yeah, it's kind of hard to put into words. My grandfather and I, we butted heads a lot. Today I understand better,
Right.
but back then I saw the damage that publicity did to families.
Yeah.
Now I understand really it was the only way they could get their name out there so that they could reach people who needed help. But I saw how devastating that publicity was, and we don't do that. We treat all of our cases as if we're doctors. We don't publicize your private details, and we don't charge you either. Our services are always free.
Wow. Okay, that's great. So, in saying that, I know we're coming to the end of our segment here. It's just been an honor and just really informative.
Yeah.
Like every time we've talked to somebody new in the field or somebody new from the foundation, like I said, we've talked to Dr. Heather Lee, we've talked to Kenny Torres. And every time we've talked to them, there's just been a wealth of information.
Yeah.
There's been, and I just I feel like we really haven't got enough information, or not. I was going to say enough, but all the information that you can offer when it comes to this. But if somebody wanted to if somebody wanted to get in contact with you specifically or the foundation, how could they do that?
If you need help, you contact us through help@warrenlegacy.com. Or just go to www.warrenlegacy.com, and there's a Google form on there. We'll be able to get to you. There's email links to all of our regional directors to help you get the help you need. I'm reachable there as well. You can reach me also on Messenger. And if you want to learn more about both my grandparents' cases and the paranormal, I do suggest you go to the Warren Files on YouTube because although they're not the greatest quality, because, it's just me, and maybe the information you get will be real and it won't be sensational.
Right.
And I think that's important.
Well, no, that's great. And thanks for coming on primarily. And I would hope that in the future that we could have another conversation, just continuing the talk that we have, and just like I said, just informing and teaching just other people that not to take this lightly and that they're well informed about everything, because if you really believe in this and you believe that this is happening on the
dangers are real,
reality plane that we are on, and it's important to kind of like, understand.
It's kind of like treat it like a loaded gun, essentially, because it's dangerous. Yeah.
No, but anyway, so
there are more things in heaven and earth than are dreamt of in your philosophy.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yep.
Well, once again, we'd like to thank Chris McKenna. Thank you very much for joining us today on the show. It was been an honor, and we look forward to hopefully talking to you again. So.
God bless you, my friend. Happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween, everybody. Okay, that's been your boy, Surrender Servant. This is Play B, the great Chris McKenna. We're definitely going to talk to him again, the Warren Legacy Foundation. Once again, thank you for listening. This has been the TAP, and you have been tapped.